You know, royal security is always a problem. I've been lucky enough to interview many of the security personnel that look after our British monarchy. And the difference is, saying to normal celebrities, and I don't mean normal because, of course, they're royals.
There are some things you simply do not say on live television. You don't reveal the location of a protected child. You don't discuss the gaps in a royal's security detail. And you certainly don't broadcast to millions of viewers the moments when a future king might be most vulnerable. And yet, that is exactly what happened. And now, according to sources with direct knowledge of the situation, it has reached the highest levels of the palace. Prince William is not happy, the school is not happy, and the broadcaster responsible is facing a very uncomfortable few days ahead. This is the story behind the story, and it matters far more than most people realize. To understand why this is serious, genuinely serious, not tabloid serious, you need to understand something about how royal security actually works. This isn't like celebrity protection. It isn't a bodyguard hovering near someone at a film premiere. Royal security is a sophisticated, layered operation, built around the principle that the less the public knows about the detail of that protection, the more effective it is. The mystique isn't just tradition, it's strategy. When Queen Camilla recently obliged a guest with a selfie at a Buckingham Palace garden party, it was charming, it was warm, and it was entirely controlled. Every element of that interaction existed within a carefully managed environment. That's how it's supposed to work. Even on those beloved royal walkabouts, where the royals move through crowds and shake hands and engage with the public, there are rules, unwritten but very real. You don't ask for selfies, you don't create moments of distraction, and you absolutely do not discuss, publicly or privately, the specifics of how those royals are being kept safe. The moment you start revealing the architecture of royal security, you don't just create a story, you potentially create a threat.
They're not celebrities, but the difference is the access to them is not easy, you know. Even when you go on those sort of royal walkabouts, it's really sort of frowned upon to ask for selfies and stuff like that, which, you know, sometimes happens.
And that is exactly what one television program has now done, with Prince George at the center of it. Here's what happened. A major British broadcaster recently ran a segment in which panelists began discussing royal security, specifically the security arrangements around Prince George at his school. Now, this on its own would be eyebrow-raising, but it went further. One of the panelists began speculating, on air to a national audience, about the specific moments when George's protection might not be at its closest, the gaps, if you will, the windows. Let that sink in for a moment. We are talking about a child who is second in line to the throne, and a broadcaster chose to air a discussion about when that child might be least protected. To draw a historical comparison, when King Charles, then Prince of Wales, attended school, his protection was constant and visible. Times were different, the threats were different, and the information landscape was completely different. Today, that kind of broadcast doesn't stay within a television audience. It clips, it spreads, it reaches people the original broadcast never intended to reach, and some of those people may not have good intentions. The program, as of the time of this report, has not removed or edited that segment, and that decision, whether deliberate or simply slow, is being noticed. The palace response. Now here's where this story moves beyond the broadcast itself. According to sources familiar with the situation, this has genuinely reached Buckingham Palace. More specifically, it has reached Prince William, and he is, by all accounts, deeply concerned. This is not a man who takes threats to his children lightly. This is a father who has fought consistently and sometimes publicly to give his children as normal and protected a life as possible. Every decision around George, Charlotte, and Louis,
Prince George. And the reason why I say this and I highlight this is you may have seen an element of this story, but now I'm going to tell you what's gone on behind the background and truly where we're at now. And it is really a bit of a sorry mess. As ever, let me explain.
Every carefully chosen public appearance, every controlled image release, is made with their safety and their well-being as the first consideration. To have a major broadcaster casually discuss the vulnerabilities in his eldest son's security on a mainstream program is not something William will simply overlook. And it isn't just the palace paying attention. The school itself, and you can entirely understand this, is now believed to be reviewing the content of that broadcast. Because someone who is granted access to royal circles, someone who operates within that world on a regular basis, should instinctively know where the line is. You do not discuss a child's security in public, full stop. Now, some will say this was accidental, a moment that slipped through, a live television conversation that ran a little too loose, a little too speculative, without anyone in the room having the presence of mind to steer it back. And that may well be true. But here's the thing about broadcasting at that level. You have editors, you have producers, you have legal teams. and you have the experience of knowing what kind of content is responsible and what isn't. Somewhere along the chain, someone should have caught this. The fact that they didn't is either a serious lapse in judgment or, and this is where some observers are going, something more deliberate. Now, I'm not going to make that accusation directly, but I will say this. When you consider that the same broadcaster recently conducted a high-profile interview with Prince Harry, and when you factor in the complicated history between ITV's senior editorial figures and the royal family, the optics of this particular slip are not great. There is also a quiet irony worth noting. The head of ITV News has long-standing historical ties to Prince William and the Princess of Wales, ties that go back many years and were once considered genuinely close. For a program operating under that banner to broadcast content that puts William's son at potential risk is, to put it tightly, a complicated situation. It is set to get murkier before it gets clearer. So what happens next? And what should happen next? Practically speaking, there are two immediate options available to the broadcaster. The first is to simply edit or remove the relevant portion of the broadcast, quietly, without drawing further attention to it. No announcement, no drama, just a recognition that the content should not remain publicly accessible. The second, and in my view the more important step, is a formal written acknowledgement to the palace. Not a press release, not a public statement, a direct private apology that says clearly, this was wrong, it should not have aired, and it will not happen again. Because here is the reality of working within royal media circles.
Now, over on ITV, you may have heard about this. They recently had a bit of a discussion on one of their programs, and they got into the thorny topic.
Access is a privilege. It is extended on the basis of trust. Trust that the people receiving it will exercise judgment, will understand the responsibility that comes with it, and will self-regulate when a line approaches. When that trust is broken, access disappears, and rightly so. The individuals involved in this broadcast are not newcomers. They know how this world works, which is precisely why the failure to self-correct, either in the moment or in the hours since, is so puzzling. Sometimes the most professional thing a broadcaster can do is say, we got this wrong, we're sorry, and here's what we're doing about it. That moment is now. There is something that should be beyond the reach of ratings, beyond the pull of a good story, beyond the competitive instincts of any newsroom, and that is the safety of a child.
You don't need to sensationalize it, you don't need to do all of the others. It's just basically a stupid error that should never have reached broadcast point.
Prince George did not choose this life. He did not ask to be born into the line of succession. He is a boy who loves football, who adores his mother, who is navigating the ordinary challenges of growing up in the very unordinary circumstances he was born into. He deserves to do that safely, without the architecture of his protection being picked apart on daytime television. Whatever comes next for the broadcaster involved, and I suspect we haven't heard the last of this story, the lesson should be simple. Some things are more important than a headline. If this story raised questions for you, if you think responsible journalism matters, drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely read every single one, and your perspective adds to this conversation in ways that matter. Like this video if you found it useful, and if you want to stay informed, really informed, not just headlined, subscribe because we go deeper here. Until next time, look after yourselves, and I'll see you very soon.